they, as a but the concept was something that they thought made a lot of sense that they'd like to look at.
Mm-hmm.
They didn't feel that they could follow process and place this. The request we had was to put an article on the special town meeting warrant.
Yep.
And while they felt it would merit such treatment, they didn't feel that they could follow process and put an article on the warrant. We spoke about it for quite a while. Ultimately, what we resolved to was that Blue Wave, at its expense, would propose what could be in the article, share it with the planning board, and that we would come back to the select board and request that the select board put us on the warrant, which the planning board's sense of the situation was that you would have the ability to do that, whereas they couldn't because we didn't have a noticed hearing with them. And they are willing to hear the matter between now and special town meeting.
Yeah.
And we also discussed the context that Blue Wave would be unwilling to have this. We would look to defer ultimately we would look to defer an article to Springtown meeting if the planning board didn't have enough time to reflect on the situation. So we're not saying we're willing to contemplate that even if an article is put on the warrant, if between now and December 8th it seems to make sense that it should be withdrawn, we're going to keep an open mind about that.
Okay.
And we're here tonight to ask that the article be placed on the special town meeting warrant.
Okay. I have a reaction to that, but I'm going to defer it for a moment and see if any of my fellow committee members have one.
I just don't think there's enough time to do this properly. There's less than a month to special town meeting. I just don't think there's time.
Walter, do you have any?
I mean, it just.
It takes our
we-
council
it
a
hit-
month to
it's
do
kind of
anything.
it's not a surprise because I knew they were coming in and it's what they wanted anyway. I think my sense is it would be better think it through and let townspeople talk about it and the different boards talk about it through the winter and put it on the special, put it on the regular town.
Yep, and if time becomes of the essence, you can always petition and pay for a special town meeting. The other concern that I have is traditionally, with respect to zoning articles, including one that is the occasion for the special town meeting, we have allowed them to come in one of two ways. One is with the recommendation and the request of the planning board, and the second is by citizen petition. And I, for one, want to stick with that because zoning articles are the primary province of the planning board, and if we start to set the precedent of picking up and putting an article on a special or an annual town meeting, for anybody who wants to walk in the door, that despite the fact that I personally, I think this is a great idea, it's just, I don't think there is the time to do that, and I'm utterly not interested in setting the precedent of having somebody being able to walk in and plunk anything they want in front of us and say, well, you did it for them. And I would also emphasize that the zoning article that is on the warrant and on the warrant on behalf of people who are paying the expenses of the special town meeting warrant, we're required to go through the citizens petition process, and I'd feel slightly like a jerk to let somebody else come in, which I may be, but I don't like to feel that I am, Okay. So I do apologize. You should take, at least on my part, you should take that as no negative indication from me in terms of the proposed project. I had said to you when you came before that that was really tight deadline. I was certainly willing to consider it if there had been a recommendation from from the planning board, but
Mhm.
we don't have that, so. You do have, you do have the possibility of a special town meeting before the annual town meeting if you wanted to do that. Okay? So, sorry.
Yeah, I think we would probably try to avoid, we would not want to have a special town meeting unless it was absolutely unavoidable, which,
Well, if it does become a commercial necessity to get something beforehand, these things can be put together on relatively short
sure.
notice.
So we totally understand that it's a difficult position we were, totally understand it's a difficult question for you to confront because there's, the issues are obvious to us. So we respect how you all feel. And I think we would like to try and spend time with you and your other boards in the near future.
Absolutely.
To make sure that we do approach Springtown meeting properly with more time. We came to you as soon as we knew we had a possibility.
Oh, no, I understand. Yeah, I understand you weren't sitting on it.
Yeah. And if we do find ourselves in a situation where a couple of months is gonna make all the difference, and that's quite possible, then we'll be prepared to request a special town meeting if that has to be how it goes.
Okay.
But thank you very much for your time tonight.
Yeah.
You think we missing anything while we're?
No, I think in addition to that, certainly we'll begin the outreach with potential butters to the project and begin our outreach with those folks. So definitely that's a preeminent concern for us that the community is accepting of the project, and so in the interim we'll begin those efforts as well.
I think that's good. I think, they're probably a representative of each of the two towns should probably sit down and think about, this and talk about things as well.
Absolutely.
And we can do that sooner rather than later. You guys are starting things, so.
We'd like to, yeah.
Okay.
Well, thank you very much and good luck.
Hang on, we may have a question from the floor here.
It may have been missed because the microphone had gotten switched off at the beginning. Can you say exactly where the location of this project is?
The location of this project is off of Gates Pond Road. It is, the majority of which is on the site of the capped former Hudson landfill. And I believe a portion of it, maybe as I remember the picture, a third or something, extends beyond the former landfill, the actual landfill, but still on the parcel that was the Hudson landfill. Is that correct?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, it's where you define the beginning and end of a landfill is very much it's an art.
Right.
I would further note for everyone to understand, we're not here, although we're here, we have an interest of a particular project, we're requesting an article related to a change in the zoning code that would apply generally, although limited, so.
All the more reason to take some time to do that.
All right, well,
Yeah. All right.
thank you all very much.
Very good.
Okay, thank you.
We'll be, hopefully, work with Mary about scheduling some more time quite soon.
As much as we try to discourage her, she keeps making appointments for us. All right.
Thanks again.
Thanks, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Right. All right, having been something of a Grinch, we will now move on to Christmas in Berlin.
Hello, Mary Reddington representing Christmas Time.
Christmas
in Berlin
time
Committee.
in Berlin, sorry.
I am here requesting use of the town's indicia to do a 1,308-piece mailing to all the postal patrons of Berlin. It will be paid for by the Recreation Committee, so I don't need you to spend money, just give us permission to spend money.
Okay.
We don't have the exact price, but it's gonna be about $271.
Okay.
And I just left Mary with a note on a bunch of other stuff that just says what we've been up to, so you guys can get an idea.
Okay. And so this will be mailing of the schedule of events and stuff like that?
Exactly.
Okay. All right.
Do we have a policy on the use of that? I mean, I think, I'd say let her do it, but do we have a policy on it?
Well, generally, we have allowed the
We have a precedent.
yeah, no, we've allowed it where it is effectively, you know, a town-sponsored
Alliance
events, yeah.
in the past.
Oh, okay, great.
Well, I would accept a motion to allow the use of the bulk mailing permit
So move.
Second.
for, okay, I was even going to say for what? But you guys really want to move on. For purposes of the mailing of the schedule of events, description of events for Christmas time in Berlin.
So move again.
Second.
All right, any further questions or discussions?
That'd be great.
Hearing none, I'll call for a vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
All right,
Excellent.
thank you.
And just as a note, I left this for Mary as well. The committee would like to invite the 3 selectmen to actually come at 5:30 when we do the tree lighting. You will not be required to speak or present, but.
Or sing Christmas
Or
carols.
you are required actually to sing Christmas carols.
As long as you don't have to lead them.
Exactly.
Right.
I'll send a note again closer to the time, but just since it is now a town-sponsored event, we thought you all might want to be there.
Do we have to dress in Santa suits and elf
No, actually, the
costumes?
fire department is taking back Santa, so they're gonna
All
do that
right.
for us.
Excellent.
All right, thank you, guys, I appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right.
Have a good evening.
Thank you, Mary.
Thanks for your work on that.
Yes.
Yeah. All right. Okay, wow, now we're almost back on schedule. The next meeting was scheduled at 7:05, and it is Rescue Chief Dennis Bartlett to talk about the creation and I believe the funding of new rescue squad officer positions.
Okay, we're getting way ahead of ourselves. I want to be able to make a position as of now
Mhm.
for no money.
So you just want to create the positions?
Correct. And I thought, from back with the spreadsheet, it had to be done from a town meeting vote.
The creation of the officer positions?
Anybody that was on the spreadsheet from way back when was put on there and it was voted for at a town meeting. And apparently that has gone to the wayside, which I didn't know, or wouldn't have to come down here. We could have just made the positions as of right now, and then come to you in the spring with a job description and so forth, and how much more money we were looking for.
Well, I would say this, that I don't believe we can fund these positions until the
Correct.
beginning of next year.
That's what
Correct.
town meeting does, it funds the
But
position.
Yeah, and-
when the spreadsheet was designed back when, I believe the people that were put onto the spreadsheet had to have a vote at the town meeting. This is not-
Well, that might be for the spreadsheet, but are you
Well, no,
asking to
no.
be put on the spreadsheet?
No, hang on. The spreadsheet is not
'Cause-
voted at town meeting.
No.
It was at one time,
Okay, well, not since
right.
I've been on Selectmen, which is since 2003, but the spreadsheet does reflect things that are voted at town meeting. So basically, the way I understand it, and we
Yeah.
can check this, that if, in the course of the budgeting process, we decide we're going to create, those officer positions, and in the course of the budgeting process, you're going to budget for a certain amount for them. We will put that in the budget. I will check to see if we also have to have a vote to create, those positions separately. I don't think we do.
At one time.
Has to have personnel committee approval.
No, I'm talking about town meeting.
Oh.
To create
The
those
job
officer
description?
positions, I don't believe you do.
So it would strictly fall onto the personnel committee.
It would fall onto the personnel
So I guess what I'm
committee.
asking the personnel committee
Mhm.
is, can I create a deputy chief and captain's positions for the
If
rescue
you,
squad?
if you come to us and you have a job description, you can present that to us, we can consider it, we can create the position. As I say, we can't fund the position until we go through the budget process, and we and apologies, because we understood that you were wanting to create the positions and ask for funding for those positions on the special town meeting. And we really felt that that is a sort of a budget process thing and should be done in the annual budget.
Was under the impression
Mhm.
that it needed a town meeting vote to put that onto the spreadsheet
No.
from way
This-
back when.
The spreadsheet will reflect,
Right.
if we approve a budget that has those officerships in it, if Personnel Committee has voted to create those, then that's the town meeting vote. And then, once the town meeting vote has been accomplished, then we will put those positions on the spreadsheet. So you're not totally wrong, because there is a vote that spreadsheet reflects.
So I could come back next Monday and throw you a classification for these positions,
I-
and then you could say, yes, I can
Yes,
appoint
I-
them at no pay.
Yes, I believe that's the case, we'll confirm it. Okay?
Well, you would think you'd want to appoint them with some pay.
Well, they're gonna get, they're doing it
Without
now.
a pay raise.
Yes.
Right
You're saying
now,
that they're effectively doing the job now.
For 17 and all.
Yeah, and what we will do in this next budget process is bring them up, I
Correct.
presume level with what we've done for the fire, is
So
that
see,
correct?
right now, yes.
Yeah,
They're gonna be squad leaders. 2 of them are actually doing all the training, keeping
Mhm.
the training records. They're doing training records for most of the police department, some of the fire department.
mm-hmm,
And they're doing,
Well, you just need to write that up in your.
yeah,
Right.
write up the job descriptions.
In your job description.
My feeling is, they are doing the job now. There isn't a huge rush to do this next week or whatever, as long as we have those positions,
Well,
so they can be justified in the course of the budget process.
It'll make them feel better the quicker.
I leave it,
The
I
quicker,
leave
the quicker
that.
they,
I leave that to you, okay?
all right.
All right, as I say, the crucial thing is to have them in early enough in the budget process that we can introduce them at the very beginning and have that in your budget.
I didn't wanna make 2 or 3 budgets up with different numbers on it.
Mm-hmm,
And now if we go ahead with this, then I'll know I can this,
Yep.
this, and this.
Yep, that's fair
Plan
enough.
out.
yep,
Okay.
thank you, Sarah. All right,
Now, can I make some
can you make some,
recommendations?
I don't know, you
of how-
can.
The order that we do this in?
Yeah, what would you like to do?
The building inspector employee contract,
Yes.
I suggested to Mary that we write up the standard one and we vote on it so that he can get paid this week. And that you can do an addendum to it with the piece that's not there right now. And we can just sign that next week or the week after or something.
Do we have a copy of the agreement in here?
I made it a short form with addendum to follow, if that's what you want.
Because otherwise, he's not gonna be able to work the new hours
36
this
hours a
week.
So this would be the short one. So with addendum to follow, those 3. Because he needs to talk to the treasurer about number 3.
Where does the addendum A come from?
It doesn't, well, he has submitted one, a draft job description, but I don't think you have ever accepted it. So technically it doesn't exist, but that's what he's asked for in his contract.
Okay, if we cross off everything from including, if we cross off including the exercise of discretion, independent judgment involving the comparison and evaluation of possible courses of conduct in acting or making a decision after various possibilities have been considered, which language I think we need to incorporate in that in that addendum. That's sort of partially writing the addendum, but if we cross that off, so it just says primary duties, inspector of buildings, zoning enforcement officer, accessibility compliance officer, and sign enforcement officer, and do the compensation, then I think I'm okay with this.
Do you want to just pen and ink, initial that X out and then actually execute that?
If that's a.
Yeah,
okay.
sounds good to me.
All right, then, shall we take a vote to execute the agreement as presented to the Selectmen's meeting tonight? Motion to do that?
So move. Oh, second.
All right. Any further discussion or comments? Okay, any questions?
Does not put the hourly rate in there, but it doesn't belong in there because that would change, correct? Just says 36 hours, which is, his past contracts haven't said the hourly rate.
Well, I thought the other one actually had an increase. I mean, I'm willing to do this, but this is one of the reasons why, we didn't have. Is she going to pay him without an hourly rate? Have you asked her that?
Well, if the previous contract didn't have it. She'll
The,
figure.
this contract states that year one retroactive to July 1 is a 3% increase.
And there's nothing here that says anything.
On
about-
page 2, no?
Let's see.
The annual percentages?
Okay.
She can calculate
nothing.
it.
All right,
It is
that's fine.
It is calculated.
All right, I'm willing to go with it. If it works, it works. If it doesn't, we'll be back next week anyway.
That's perfect.
Okay?
All right?
Yep.
All right. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All right, so we should each sign this and each initial that, all right? There you go. All right.
Those just need to be signed.
Yep.
Help it.
That's it.
Okay. Then any other,
Well, I think I really would want to get the public safety study, the MRI stuff moving. It's just been sitting here.
You did ask for that to be re-agended for next week's meeting.
Yeah.
yeah, for next
We'll do it
week's
next
meeting?
The
week.
10th.
Oh,
We decided that.
If you want, I can get it, it's down the hall.
No, it's
well,
still
I'm,
good. Go
man.
ahead.
Well, then what is number 6, the discussion on here for?
They are asking for permission to
Who's they?
schedule. MRI is
Mhm.
looking for permission to schedule for starting the day after the 10th, so next Tuesday and Wednesday, reaching out to meet to set up appointments with the chiefs, and also to start asking them now in advance for documents that they would want to review in advance of touching down in the town. So they wanted to know if that would be appropriate to do in advance of you signing the contract next week.
I don't have any problem with that.
No, because we'll have signed it next week.
Okay, so I'll let them know that, that's
Yeah.
all.
Okay.
I read it a couple times. I think it covers, it's pretty broad.
Okay.
Go.
I didn't have a chance to because I was in New York most of last week. I was doing some other stuff over the weekend on the, reviewing one of our litigation matters. Anyway, anything else you want to?
No, I would like to do number 3 before 7:45, but, I mean, I think we should be. I don't know what A is about, but I do know what B is about.
The A, if you want me to tell you about what this is about,
what are we looking at?
Three.
Three.
Number three.
Okay,
So the the personnel classification spreadsheet,
yep,
this is not me, but the auditor, the accountant says that the COLA traditionally applied to everybody on the grid and under the
Oh,
grid.
that's right. Yeah.
And that under the grid, the only two exceptions to the rule would be her post and the fire chief as salary posts that had hour increases this year. But she said even still, in the past, traditionally, the entire page gets the COLA. And then department heads or appointing authorities decide whether they want to give step increases or any other kind of added pay in their budget. But she says the COLA has universally applied to everybody. And that, I believe that she talked to a couple of selectmen about this too.
I guess my point is that if you're on the grid, you essentially, discussed this already.
Yeah, we did.
Get a 3% raise if
Yeah.
you're taking a step.
No, we went over that last week, and what we had said was, not that those who were off the grid would not get a COLA, although I can see how somebody might have taken what we said that way. It was whether those who are off the grid should be entitled to more than the COLA, so maybe we should just restate that.
Well, I think that when you hand out the grid, when you hand out that piece of paper, those on the grid already have an increase, where those underneath don't have any kind of increase. And I think that's where the confusion is coming in.
Mhm.
The grid has an automatic calculator, so once you put 1.6.
No, I understand that,
we know.
and it has the steps and all of that. We took it off the grid and didn't apply the COLA below, because we were talking last time about the fact that the department or appointing
Right.
parties
Would make,
should consider the COLA and, another increase, given the fact that they weren't getting step increases, I don't think that's a bad thing, and I think the result is gonna end up being
Well-
that we will stick with policy. I don't understand why it's such a big issue.
I guess
I
that this
think
predates me, it's a big
when-
break with tradition, I guess.
when people look at it, they think that's what's being recommended. And what they're seeing is their current year's salary once again.
I thought we had a
Because
note
we-
on there, I thought that we had a note in our message that told people what to do about that.
Well, I think the easiest thing to do would be to apply the 1.6 below, and if they feel they should get a little bit more, then they can ask for it.
Okay, fine. You want to make a
Okay.
motion
A
to that
lot of
effect?
people felt that way, by the way. I was in here the
That's
next
fine,
day.
that's fine. I think
A lot of people.
our point was not to disallow the
I know that,
1.6.
I know.
It was actually to say that was not
Right.
going to be, that people should not look at that as being the be-all and end-all. That's what we were
Right.
responding
That's what I
to, so.
thought.
Yep,
Well, I make a motion that the cost of living be applied to all positions on the, they call it a spreadsheet, but
Personnel classification.
personnel classification.
And I will second that.
okay. Any, and then our message will still, our selectmen's message is still going to say, people should consider with respect to those additional compensation,
Mhm.
okay, if they feel it's appropriate.
I think the letter says something a little bit different, but maybe.
Is the letter, do you have the
It
letter?
is, it's attached with everything else. I think it's the third tab. It's the red tab.
It says COLAs and any other adjustments to hourly and salary employees not on the personnel classification spreadsheet should be considered by their department head or appointing authority as per the budget process. So now, if we're going to give everybody the COLAs, so our statement would say any other adjustments to hourly and salary employees not on the spreadsheet
Okay,
should be considered, okay?
yes.
And I think that's what we meant,
Yeah.
all right?
Gonna whip that up for tonight?
Does that doesn't get signed? Neither
No.
actually is signed.
No.
No, it would,
Just a
I mean,
letter.
if there are questions when we get into the officers' meeting, we can clarify that, because I say our point was absolutely not to
It's fine.
keep those people from getting the COLA. It was the idea that just giving them the COLA was not necessarily fair because others were getting steps.
And then adding the
Okay,
asterisks
fine.
would, for just to show where minimum wage is gonna go on January 1st.
I think everybody could get that.
Yeah,
I hope they can.
Yeah, that's fine. And as I say, we will be issuing another spreadsheet before that actually happens, so.
The bottom line, we were benefiting those people on it.
Yeah, we were trying to benefit them,
and
not
it
cut
came out
something
the wrong
away.
way.
Yep, absolutely. Absolutely. All right, so that's that one. And the budget letter, we just have to
Yep, it's fine.
make that small correction. Okay?
Correction, I'm keeping it the same, no?
No, you're taking out the budget letter?
Yeah.
In the
You're
budget
taking out
letter,
the co-
it now says COLAs and any other adjustments to hourly and salary employees not on the personnel classification spreadsheet should be considered. So that's, I think, was the source of the confusion.
Yeah.
So what we want to say is any adjustments other than the COLA, okay? All right?
Yes.
And then we've, I think, corresponded the two documents, okay?
Okay.
All right. I would just point out that we're the only ones there who don't have a higher authority who can consider a raise greater than a COLA, so, under that policy.
It could be higher.
All right?
So you need to do number 2.
Yep, I'll get out here. All right. We have a reimbursement from the building inspector of expenses, representing mileage, reimbursement from Neshoba Blueprint copies, a key to the office for the clerk, and postage for mailing packages, totaling $352.47. I take a motion to authorize this reimbursement.
So moved.
Second.
Anybody have any questions or comments? All right, hearing none, I'll take a vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Second on that one. All right.
Dennis, this is number 5, if you want to go there. Number 5 is the treasurer.
Yes, yep.
You want me to read the department head?
All right. Very timely entrance from the treasurer. We have item number 5, which is the contract for payroll services. Right?
Yes.
Okay. You want to say a couple
Yeah.
words? I know you said a couple words to me on the way in, but we might as well.
We were notified by our current processor, who we've had for a good 20-something years, that they're turning their business over to ADP, which is a giant payroll processing company, national. And it's going to be done in a very, very quick manner. So we don't have the option of going out and shopping around and taking our time to convert files, et cetera. We probably have a month window to get this all done.
Okay.
These are very stressful, they're very difficult. Part A and Part B never seem to fit 100%.
Yep.
So it's gonna take a lot of time. It will also possibly change the way we do it. Right now, it's a batch system. It may require a lot of data entry on our end now, where before the company did it at their location. So once the team comes out from ADP, we'll know better. But they need the contract signed ASAP to get the ball rolling and
Okay.
shoot for end of November, early December turnover.
Okay.
How
The
long
co-
is the commitment on that?
There's a commitment for 18 months that they'll honor the price of the old company. And if you look at the math, it's a 52% discount. So we've been getting a pretty good deal all these years, which we knew.
It's a 52% discount from ADP's normal prices?
Correct, yes. There's no obligation opt-out. although that's kind of a wolf in sheep's clothing, because to get old files and data, there's probably a fee, but just to walk away from it, there's no penalty within that period. There are a couple other companies that prefer to have to match what Boylston and the school system has, just to keep it, you know, similar. And they're a little bit more up-to-date technology-wise.
Then ADP?
ADP has different packages.
Mhm.
The one or two that I'm thinking of are specifically written for municipalities.
Mhm.
So it's, you know, a little bit more advanced, but the ADP one will work fine. It's just, I thought.
So you're saying that at
compatibility-
some point in the future, we might decide to, to
Yes.
combine, okay?
Yeah.
And you're saying that there's no penalty
To get out of it.
to get out of
Yeah.
it?
So I still have the other companies coming. We may talk about doing something. Timing is everything with payroll. You usually shoot for the first of the year, see your W-2s and all that, coming
Right.
from one source, et cetera.
And at what point would you, in order to assure a transition, if the current provider is going to be terminating the service in as short as a month, at what point would you have to start to exchange information with the successor provider? You know,
Right away.
right away,
Yes.
okay?
Sounds like we don't have much other choice at this
Well,
point.
we don't. But I'm happy about the discount.
That's good.
Kind of takes the pain away. You don't like to do it this way. I'm a little disappointed in the old company kind of doing it this fast. I suspect there may be health issues involved, but that hasn't been said. But it's not like them, but it's happening.
Yeah, and I'm just looking quickly. One of the things that I looked at, and I think this is important, is that before we start exchanging information, we want to be sure that the party that we're exchanging information with has agreed to keep things private and confidential, and they have agreed, and Massachusetts law has a very high standard in that regard, and they, as you were talking, I was looking, and they have agreed to maintain those standards of privacy and confidentiality. So I think that's another reason to do it sooner rather than later, because you want to have that agreement in place before you exchange the first information.
The only item I saw in the contract, we spoke a little earlier, is their ability to prepay themselves by going into our account.
Yep.
And I don't have a problem with that in theory, because the banks do that by law. But because of the warrant process, it's not a good thing, it's not legal. So they had pre-checked that box, and they just said we can undo it, we don't have to do it that way. That's the only part of the contract that I didn't like.
Okay.
So they'll send us a bill, we'll go through the normal
What-
process.
What section is that?
It's, might even be on the first
it
page,
on the
I looked
front?
at my office. But
Let's
they
see.
checked off a few little boxes of the service it provides, and it's second or third one in from the left.
Okay. And we have to cross one of these off, right?
Correct.
Okay. Is it? Okay, bank is authorized. I just want to be, do you want to come up here? Because I
Sure.
want to be sure we have this right. I think is this the page you're talking about?
Yes, yeah, this one right here.
Okay.
Yeah, the service fee.
Okay. Because obviously they are going to pull down the draft for the
Correct,
payments.
they'll have
Okay, that's
access
what
to
I-
that particular account.
Okay. All right, so I should cross off the fee for services, which
Yes.
is checked. All right. And where's the price agreement on this?
It's down the bottom of one of the pages where they pretty much match the fee schedule that we currently have at Boston Business Service.
The reason I'm asking is when I look at the termination clause, it says that we can terminate on 30 days notice. They have to give us 90 days notice, that's all good. It says, subject to the terms of the
Like
price
this.
agreement, it could be so I just wanted to look at the price agreement to be sure there was no termination fee.
It's in
and how
the
that-
paperwork. It's,
Okay. Sorry to be tedious, do you
That's
mind if
all right.
we just take a quick look, all right?
Down in here. It's on one of these pages in this section.
Okay.
At the bottom.
It says no, does it say no termination fee, or is it just not something,
It's not something that,
it's just not there?
right.
So this is the price agreement
Correct,
here?
yep. And they did show the 52% discount.
Yep, we see the
Yep.
discount, 52.7.
Yep, off their normal rate.
Okay. Okay, so therefore, because this doesn't state anything, okay, I just wanted to be sure that we
Yep.
didn't get ourselves into a penalty situation, since you suggested that you might want to change this at some point in the future. Okay. I guess I feel that it is necessary to do this for the reasons that we've discussed, and I'd take a motion to that effect.
So,
Second.
Okay, and this is, the motion here is to execute the payroll agreement with ADP as presented to the Board of Selectmen tonight. Any further discussion or questions?
nope.
Okay. Hearing none, I'll take a vote. All those in favor of executing the agreement, please say aye.
Aye.
Thanks, Dennis, for the explanation.
It's gonna be very painful for me.
Yeah. Okey-doke. And so I have to execute it there. And just a minute, I have to cross off that other thing on the second copy. Okey-doke. There you go. All right.
You've got a Cook property update, SB on
Yeah, you wanted, we have on the agenda for a Cook property update?
I was approached by one of the relatives who appear to be inheriting the property.
Mhm.
Two properties, one in Bolton, one in Berlin, both in tax title. Quite a bit of money owed on the Bolton one, and roughly 16 to 18,000 owed on the Berlin one. The land court gave us full possession of the property. Technically, it's the town of Berlin's. I could just refuse their request, but because of the circumstances, it involved an elderly person who wasn't, we don't believe, mentally all there, and unopened mail and all sorts of things that are a little bit unique compared to some of the other properties that we've had. The treasurer has a right to rescind or reverse the court order and give the property back to the person, providing they pay the full amount that's owed.
Basically, you can allow a redemption.
Yep.
Yep.
Part of me was a little uncomfortable because it's precedent, but because the law says it could be done on a case-by-case basis,
Mhm.
I bounced it off a few people, and,
Mhm.
you know, I like to get a general consensus.
Mhm.
And most of the folks felt that it was the fair thing to do in these circumstances.
Mhm.
So I gave the parties a month to come up with the funds and to also prove that there'd be a party of interest that they are indeed going to inherit both properties. And the reason both properties have come into play is they live in another town. They've been fixing up this property once it's been settled by probate to take the profit from that house and save the house that's in Bolton.
Mhm.
So,
So they wanna sell the house in Berlin.
correct.
Keep the house.
Yes, and they've put quite a bit of effort into fixing it up. You know, when I heard we were going to be the proud owners, we planned on selling it as quickly as we could because it was a little bit run down. When the building inspector, myself, the constable inspected the property, Diane went. It was a nice looking little place. So these kids have put a lot of time into this property in anticipation of.
Where is this property located?
It's up on Coburn Road. And it's a little bit past, I think there's a tower on the Berlin Auto Parts property, cell tower. It's kind of in that area.
Okay.
And it's a small place, you know, it's cute, but, so that's the terms that I gave them, so they can get the property back.
Okay. Okay, did they indicate how they plan to demonstrate that they were the heirs? Is there a will? or-
That's why I wanted a copy of the will as part of that two-part
But it's a
proof.
will, it's not intended.
Correct, it's a will.
Okay.
And it's currently going, she just passed away a month or so ago, Di?
A week ago,
Less?
last Wednesday.
Yeah, it was quick, so this is all new and fast, so
Yep, okay.
that's the status.
All right, thank you.
Yep.
All right. Then I think that gets us to a discussion regarding board liaisons.
Ask Mary, she put it on.
Well, the accountant asked for someone who could, she was gonna be here tonight too, someone who could, she could bounce things off of, instead of coming to meetings, someone who could bring the messages back to the board to deliberate on when she has issues. And then that uncorked a larger discussion as to who is anyone's liaison for the department heads.
I
And,
thought we settled that. I thought that was all done.
well, I'm not sure. if
Well,
it's-
with respect to police, fire, rescue, and highway, but we. So this then would be, we're seeking a liaison for whom
The
exactly?
accountant.
The accountant.
And it was not clear whose municipal building. Is that
Well,
vis-a-vis
how can you be a liaison to a building?
the building, cost center, the facilities manager? Is
No,
that
I
necessarily
don't
the
That's
same?
think,
Keith.
it
That's
isn't necessarily a liaison to the accountant. She actually, the question was, who was the liaison? She wanted to know about the building, the highway superintendent and stuff, and related to his building administrative work. And so I spent some time with her, but just because it was Keith.
Yeah.
But she doesn't need a liaison. She needs.
No. No, she actually was.
Tom would
asking
be
for
the
one.
liaison to police, Judy would be for fire to her, I would be for Keith to her, and I think that's what she was looking for.
She was looking for one for herself, and she
Oh,
can confirm
okay.
that when she gets here.
I
Okay.
don't understand that.
I'd let her speak to it then, instead of me trying.
Yeah, I'd be willing to give it a try. It's not necessarily that I could certainly be reached by phone, and as you know, I can stop by during the days on at least an every other week basis, if that's necessary.
I think that's what she's looking for.
Good job that you haven't.
Is that okay?
Okay.
Or if you really want to do it.
No, you didn't hear me open my mouth on that.
Um,
I got enough.
Yeah, I mean, I think I'm certainly willing to do it, and I am, I'm certainly generally available by phone within an hour or two of when somebody calls me, unless I'm traveling, but, yeah, I mean, so I'm perfectly happy to be the go-to person. So it is really just the account, is all we're talking about, right?
I guess so.
Yeah, okay. All right. It is 7:45. So we are, we're into the officers' meeting. Do we want to, and we are also at the end of the regular agenda. I mean, we do.
Except for closing the warrant at 8.
Yes, I know that.
Okay.
I know that. That's why I keep looking at my watch.
I have an alarm set.
Oh, all right. Okay. Do we want to hang out for about 5 minutes and see if other people show up, or do you think this is the crew?
We have to close the warrant by 8.
8 at 8.
At
You
oh,
can go,
at eight.
you can go smoke a cigarette.
All right, we'll take a 5-minute break, and then we'll go into the officers' meeting, all right?
Okay?
Give us a
Again.
Yeah, so we're back in session. It's 4 to 8, and this is a town officers meeting as we entered the budget process and start to look forward at this point to a new fiscal year that, even though it seems like a long way away, and the other side of winter is going to be on us before we know it, there's lots of things happening in town. Fiscally, I think we're in better shape than we've been in a long time, as some of the new development keeps in line, and that's a great advantage to the town, but it's also a great opportunity to screw things up by not planning appropriately, and I've been very impressed by the attitudes of the other boards, the other town officers, FinCom, our police union, to address some of the things that we've been scrimping on, address the things that we need to address, but not to go crazy, and to recognize that this is an opportunity to stabilize taxes. I think probably ultimately to return some taxes in the way of rate reduction, but to spend the monies that are coming in a responsible way. Let's see. There was one other thing I wanted to say. No, I guess it wasn't that important. So tonight we have presentations from the assessors, the treasurer, the planning board, the conservation commission, the zoning board of appeals, and the library. The selectmen are going to leave this table and let the presenters come up here so that it's easier for people to see on the tape, but I am going to ask people to try to keep their presentations somewhere around, the 10-minute mark, because with 6 other presentations after I finish talking, even if we do keep to 10 minutes, we'll still be here an hour. So.
And I do have something I want to say too.
And I think Judy has something she wants to say.
I would like to remind everyone that all of your volunteers and employees need to have a quarry or have been quarried. I don't know, I have a list, but if you know people that you have in your department that haven't been quarried, there's quarry form is on the town website under personnel. Please get them quarried, send them over, give them to Mary in an envelope, and I'll run them through the quarry system.
Closing the warrant.
So even if you were hired 25 years ago and you never had a quarry, you don't do that?
You should be quarried
Every 2 years, right?
every 2, well, I mean, once you're quarried, we don't re-quarry
I don't
normally.
recall anybody being quarried.
The other one is that I'm working on the Senior Veterans Property Tax Work-Off Program, and I sent everyone an email. If you could reply by the end of this week and tell me if you think that you would have a position for someone. The maximum amount they can earn is $1,000, and since the program doesn't start till July 1st, 2015, if you divide 1,000 by $9.50, because half the year would be $9, they get paid minimum wage. So starting January, minimum wage is $9, and then starting January of 2016, it's $10. So you only end up with about 103 hours that you can actually have them work to reach their maximum. Anyway,
Okay,
all I had to say.
all right. One last thing before we go into the officers' meeting. It is 8 o'clock. It is November 3rd, and that is the witching hour for us to close the warrant for the special town meeting that will be held on December 8th. So anyone who has anything to submit needs to come forth now, otherwise we are going to vote imminently to close the special town meeting warrant. Is there anything to be submitted?
We're assuming we're safe with the two we gave you, right?
Yes.
We gave you one, and there's the other one that.
Do you have a
Came out
concern
by-
on the order, Tim? Do you have a concern on the order?
We'd love ours to be second.
Okay, it is, okay.
Okay. Yes. So you're talking about the citizens petition and then a second one
Yes.
that you submitted to us. Okay, yep, those are both. Anything else? All right, hearing none, I would accept a motion to close the special town meeting warrant for the special town meeting December 8th.
So moved.
Second.
Any further questions, discussions, comments? Hearing none, I'll take a vote. All of those in favor of closing the special town meeting warrant, say aye.
Aye.
I'm now going to turn the podium over to the Board of Assessors.
I guess so. My paper just says assessors. Yeah. I only made 15, so if somebody wants to share, I can email you a copy. Yeah. So the things that were on the agenda for town officers meeting were just some ideas that I had thrown out there that we collectively, town officials could discuss, but since this is the way you've decided to present the town officers meeting at the last minute, I whipped some stuff together. So, here we go. So in fiscal planning, long-term financial planning, holding your own financially with little commercial growth and assuming a residential boom. I guess those three things kind of go hand in hand. So what I'm passing out to you is some historical, all the valuation pre-Solomon Pond. I thought that was a good place to start.
Yeah.
Because a lot of our growth came as a result of the valuation change with that commercial development for maybe many of the reasons why people decided to vote that overlay district for the benefits that the commercial valuation would provide to the town to get the Wheels program going, which we successfully did. And so as you follow along that page, you can see kind of the fluctuations in the commercial valuation. And as well, the residential valuation has grown. And a planner may argue that people may like living around the proximity of commercial development because it is a convenience. Others may argue that that's not so, and they choose to live somewhere else, but we've certainly had a residential boom
Yay, market basket.
over the years as a result of a lot of this commercial development. And as you can follow along, not only you can follow the tax rates, but the kind of further down at the bottom of the page, the result of the shift when we add that commercial value, what percentage the residential levy is carrying on the tax burden, has gone from 96, just the year prior to the valuation of the Solomon Pond coming in and benefiting. It was 83% of the tax levy on a bill. Not too many years later, it was 67. Today, with not even the build-out of Highland Commons and Riverbridge, we're at 64% residential, 36% in commercial, industrial, personal property. And just a note about the tax bill, that it's gone from, in 96, to $2,400 a year to $6,400 a year currently, which one
That's the
might-
average residential tax bill?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And that's.
From when to when, Diane?
96, it's almost 20 years.
20 years, yeah.
20 years of valuation and revals and, the distribution of valuations. And that increase is not just solely because the market went up. We've increased our budgets responding to the services that are required to offset the growth in the town, and not all public safety. There's paperwork, there's all kinds of things that have to go on to manage a town when it's growing as it is, and also when you have big town wealth, you'll see on the next page your state aid starts to dwindle. So it's kind of a double whammy, and you spend more on education as a result of it. All of those things kind of work together. So that's kind of this interesting facts in a nutshell. So then I move on to, Dennis and I like to follow several different factors and communities as we try to grade ourselves on how we do, not just in overall town budgeting, but with varying portions of town government on how much they grow and why they grow and how do they compare to other communities. So while we select a lot of them, the one that I think is the closest to the town of Berlin is the town of Paxton. Because the town of Paxton has almost a dollar for dollar budget, the town of Berlin. The population in Paxton, primarily residential, has 4,860 people. The town of Berlin has 2,900, for the sake of argument. Paxton has 15 square miles of roads. Berlin has 13.2 or 13.7, depending on which number you agree to use. So on this page, it goes from 1996 to the current tax levy, shows where the levy ends up to be, the state aid as a result, as you can see in 1996, with a levy of $2.5 million, we had state aid of $516. 2012, in 2006, our state aid really increased. 2012, it was cut back. It was cut back again, and it went up just slightly this past year. So there's a lot of determining factors, but the Solomon Pond Mall, of course, we had a great mitigation package to offset some of the costs of public safety, have some pretty good mitigation with the Highland Commons Shopping Center. The valuation is only right now at about a third of the total build-out of the valuation. I expect over the next 3 years, we'll see another $30 to $40 million in valuation from that project. And as well, with the next 3 to 5 years, cautiously on the 5, $30 to $40 million at River Bridge if that project actually gets built out.
That being the case, have you tried to project like 2017's ratio between
Are you gonna speak to that next?
residential and?
We have, Dennis and I have done that.
Yeah,
And
if I
I
could
don't
jump.
wanna,
One of the things that I was going to propose tonight is we have a more advanced financial team to get into the really high-level planning that really has to take place. It seems simple on the surface, but it's very complicated. It's very doable,
yeah,
but that's one of the things we wanted to do, is to bring it out 5 years.
Right.
And part of that is the input from the planning board. Because as I've said in the past, most towns, the planning board isn't as financially savvy as the Berlin one seems to be, and how it impacts everything when you guys make a decision. So we have talked about that,
yeah,
and would like to see that kind of a team put together.
right. So the Financial Advisory Committee has been doing some work,
Yes.
using some 3 to 5 year valuation projections on the new commercial development. But one thing that caught my eye in your master plan 2013 was a statement in there about the build out. You know, if there was a build out of certain number of a certain number of acres in the 20-year period, there might be an additional almost 1,500 residential units with an increase of blah, blah, blah. You know, I mean, so that was done 2 years ago, and we already have another like 150 residential
Yeah, but
units.
Do you wanna, I mean, you're talking apples and oranges, though.
Right.
I mean, it's not, that's one of the issues that we think we need to address.
That's a
And-
result of commercial development.
Well, if you manage to control 40Bs, the equation changes dramatically, and we go back to where we were, 20 years ago in terms of growth. That's,
Right.
I think, what we suspect.
Right.
And that means a great deal of difference from what you've experienced over the last 15, and it's important for us to understand that, and I think that's one of the things we want to talk about when we get our chance.
Good. Okay, and it's the
The
second
nice
page.
thing is, I think we're a lot of us are in sync here, yeah.
Yeah, it's kind of the, you know, it's not it's a bigger wheels program. It's like more like a facilities, we're on the next phase. We've identified and planned for wheels very carefully, and now it's funding all of these other growth-related facilities and community development. So the other thing that I wanted to talk about was some efficiencies in moving forward, just throwing them out there, not picking on anybody. But over probably the past 20-some years, there's been, the DOR does financial management reviews. The Edward Collins Center for Public Management does a lot of reviews, all of communities of varying sizes. But the theme in the past 5 years, especially for communities of our size, I just thought I would, put them out on a piece of paper. Maybe some of these would be acted upon in the future by the Board of Selectmen, but payroll process inefficiencies, department heads would complete a spreadsheet and gather signature. I mean, this is what we do now. We're passing paper around every week, trying to get somebody's signature, blah, blah, blah. So These places think that's an inefficient way to do business, that things ought to just be able to go in, on spreadsheets and be sent electronically to the accountant, and it really reduces the opportunity for error. We don't have any centralized purchasing. So you really don't, even with paper, we all are buying our own paper. There was a time when we decided no more computer hardware in our budgets. And that may or may not have been a good thing, but in terms of purchasing power, it was a good thing. But other things that we all buy in bulk, we may be able to capture some savings by buying those together. Procurement and contract oversight, we're all doing it ourselves. Have all of us had 30B procurement training, and do we know what the rules really are? I don't know.
No.
But it might be a good time to think about having somebody on the hook as being a procurement officer. Standardizing town hall hours has always been a problem. There is no alignment of the hours that departments work. People come in, they try to do one thing in one town hall, that one's closed, that one's gone to the post office. We're not in sync, and it's very frustrating to taxpayers and providing quality service to those people that pay our wages. Might be something to consider. Record management really is kind of, people that work here need to have some training on proper documentation and record disposal, how to organize, where they organize, what they organize. The treasurer-collector position being combined is something the Department of Revenue has been promoting for 10 or 15 years. There is just, that's a throwback to years and years ago when, Joe Q. Public on the street could do these jobs. They're too technical and responsible of positions that it really needs to be an appointed position by the Board of Selectmen. I do have an article that I was actually going to submit this evening for your consideration to move that forward. Because there are rules about timing of that, but I'm just putting it out there for you guys to consider. Centralize the collection of fees, online permitting. We're just getting into with the inspection of permit inspections, but there are a lot of other departments that could benefit by using that software. Human resources, we don't have, that position doesn't exist. It's so needed for the requirements by the Department of Revenue. And I know that some of these functions are spread over by a couple of people that really shouldn't have to do those jobs or don't have the education to do those jobs, and it's needed. The Board of Selectmen, I'm picking on you guys, but there's a wicked heavy workload. And maybe it's time to think about a part-time or full-time town administrator or manager that will oversee and have power to act on the day-to-day operations of the town. And the Board of Selectmen can do goal setting and objectives and move other projects forward and not the general running of the town. Some other regionalization efforts. Dispatch is discussing, regionalization efforts, HR services, IT functions, public safety services, highway equipment sharing, coordination of facilities management. All of these things come up. These aren't my ideas. These come out of these DOR and the Collins Center studies. But one of them was having a highway superintendent or a public works superintendent who coordinates all the facilities management. You oversee and you have under you the staff of, the custodial staff of the school, the facilities management and oversight of the school. You, the same with the cemetery, the transfer station, all of those personnel under one department head. Efficiencies in staffing, use of equipment, outside contractors, contract work, blah, blah, blah. And the facilities management, kind of the same things. Transfer station costs, I threw in there only because when I was doing this work with Paxton, and looking at their budget and all their budget cost, for 1,900 parcels, versus the 1,563 we had last year in Berlin. They provide curbside service for a cost of about $200,000 a year. We currently have an operation that costs $150,000, yet we get some fees. But in curbside, a taxpayer can write off that as part of their taxes. There is no write-off for a fee type of business. And I thought it was appropriate to look at it now because we're talking about making more investments. We just invested some tar down there, talking about new compactors, new roofing, another $50,000, and before it, grows into something bigger, sounds like there's another opportunity here. Consolidation of the IT services, I think the Board of Selectmen are onto that. And that's about it.
Thank you. I think we
Oh,
got.
I'm sorry. That was a watch.
No, that's okay. It was interesting.
I tried to.
We have the treasurer up next.
Yep. I'm getting old, boy. I'll be really brief.
That's good because the assessor talked a long time.
I said half of your stuff.
I know, and I don't have a handout
good
because
stuff.
if you're an FAC member, you've already received your half a tree
Yes,
uh,
that's right.
at the last meeting. One of the things, tomorrow we're gonna be voting, I'm running the election, I'm sure I don't have to tell you to go out and vote tomorrow. But I do wanna touch on one thing that Diane hit on. Things here at the town hall are crazy. The volumes have grown a little bit faster than I thought people thought they would with all this development that's coming in. It's put a lot of pressure on people. Some don't handle it well. And it's created a very confusing environment. So we're all aware of it. We're all working real hard to get stuff done. But it's something to keep in mind.
Who would say on days it's a bit chaotic
Yeah.
between departments?
And it's very inefficient.
Yeah.
You can spend an hour trying to solve one little problem
Yeah. Yes.
We implemented a time usage tracking system at the request of the auditors. It was a major project. It involves manual work, but we've been tracking sick pay, vacation pay, and personal time. And I just wanted to point out to all the managers at all departments, from my observation, use sick time as vacation and personal time. And it's just something to be aware of. That's not the purpose of sick pay. And it will be up to the personnel committee to decide if they want to do anything about it. The payrolls fiasco, I call it, we already talked about. We have to switch over. It's a major project. It's going to take a lot of my time. It's something we don't like to do even in the best of times. It's pretty complicated. So hopefully we won't mess up too many paychecks in the process. The personnel issue that Diane brought up is really critical. The biggest enemy we have isn't whether or not we can handle the basics that we know. I've done personnel for many years. The government's changing the rules so fast, I can't keep up with it. And there's a thread that's gone around between a lot of the treasurers in the state. We have kind of a little club that I've sent to Mary. She's seen some of them. They're all complaining about the same thing. You just can't keep up. You really have to go to school for it now, and you need to specialize in HR. And we've commissioned, is that the right word, a study that hasn't happened, but the Central Mass Regional Planning was supposed to do a study to see if we could share one with the school system, Boylston, and kind of take the burden off of all the treasurers and the personnel that are involved. I basically do more than the selectmen right now because you have to do it to get the payroll done on a daily basis. And it just takes up a lot of time. We also have instituted a mandatory direct deposit for all employees. It's gone over actually a little better than I thought it would. We first approached the unions and we received an okay from both the teachers and the police union. And we have given the employees till January 27th to comply, so we'll gently prod them along. I mentioned earlier that there's a need for, I call it advanced math, but it's getting very complicated to plan what's going to happen in the future. And it's very doable, but it involves a whole bunch of sources, opinions, and we need some more policies put in place to handle some of the new stuff that's happening. We have meals tax, hotel tax, we have the mitigation money coming in. We also have 3 major projects. We have a conservation, we'll talk about some of their funds running low, trying to protect some of our property. We have debt that's disappearing. And when I talk about creating debt to keep the tax rate level, some people stare at me and want to throw things at me, but it's high-level conversations that have to be talked about and given some serious thought. So we also are realizing the beginning of the billing and the income from the mitigation of Highland Commons, and we'll be doing a pre-bill in November, December based on what we think will be the square footage. So we don't have to wait for funds like we did the last time. It took a little bit of time to figure out what was wrong with the billing, and it did come in. The study that Diane talked about, one of the things that's unique for Berlin, and Tom's the only one that ever picked it out of a fairly complicated chart. Nobody else could figure it out. And that is Berlin, being the smallest town between Boston and Quabbin, also has the highest per resident cost in the surrounding towns and most of the state. There's a couple that are a little bit higher. And one of the reasons.
Total cost?
Total cost.
You take,
Total government cost
Correct.
divided it by, okay.
yep.
Basically a per capita cost.
Per capita.
Yes, and one of the reasons is there are similar expenses for a 4,800 population as there are for 29. You just have fewer people dividing the similar costs. And it's not that simple, but you know, that's kind of the beginning of it. She mentioned combining the job. One of the there's a disadvantage and an advantage to appointed officials, especially the treasurer's position. Part of what the treasurer does is defend the taxpayer against the government of Berlin. When you appoint the treasurer, a lot of their powers are diminished to do that. However, it's something that is a good thing, I feel, because then you can bring in people from out of town with higher degrees, more experience, and it's something down the line that you're probably going to see, or hopefully you'll see. We talked about the tax title. One of the things we thought we were going to do was be a landlord, and we didn't want to be. So I had planned on the Cook property being auctioned off as quickly and legally as possible. It's not simple, but it would have happened probably within a 2-3 month period if everything went well. Because of that, I interviewed 3 tax title companies, and I have selected a company to do future tax title auctions, which we need to get the team together and see about doing one. We have 3 or 4 buildable lots, you know. We're not talking a lot of money without this house, the Cook property, but you know, it's money that we could put back on the tax rolls. We do have a team, Walter from Conservation, we have Highway, to make sure that this little junk parcel doesn't open up a 200 unit in the back. So it's a little more complicated than just, hey, let's get rid of them. And we're also very conservation oriented here in Berlin. So I have not auctioned anything. It's about 20 properties just to keep them as open space without the conservation restrictions. And at the last town meeting, we handed over 4 or 5 parcels
Well, yeah.
that were critical,
Jesus.
to conservation, so it's ended up pretty good. Like I mentioned earlier, we are getting to the point where the debt's disappearing. We have 5 or 6 years left on this building, and then other than WPAT and the assessment for Tohoto, we have no debt. So most towns have a debt policy. Oh, Assabet too, sorry. That's in the budget though, right? Yeah, that's fit into the budget. The FAC is looking at, and this ties into the debt, and follow me. We have 3 huge projects that are proposed. And I'm not saying they're going to happen or they should, I'm just saying proposed. One is a $990,000 ladder truck. The second is a $500,000+ elevator project / historical society project in the center of town. And then well, I won't name an amount because I get jumped on, but a multi-million or a couple $1 million highway project for the highway barn. And the question we address at FAC is, do you do them all at once and plan with the low interest rate? Do we roll them out over the next 10 years and take them and pay cash as we go along? So those are the things that we're working on. And one of the things that comes into play when you talk about that stuff is the unknown on the 750,000, what do you call it, cultural.
Mhm.
And actually the other project, the 4th one would be to purchase that property if it should happen.
Sorry, what property?
What property?
50
South
South
Street.
Cully.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
You know, because that's gonna come from somewhere, stabilization, or from, you know,
Mhm.
100,000 here and there. So, that's what's going on. And how we approach those, we'll try to figure out this year, because it's pretty complicated. One of the things that has come up because of conservation running low on funds, and it seems everyone's coming out of 61, A, B, C, D, whatever is how do you handle that outside the box? And there's some proposals that are thrown out, and of course they get thrown back real fast, but there's something to think about. Do we borrow money to purchase some properties that are coming up and somehow work in the income and the commercial rate and all that complicated stuff that's coming in the future to help finance part of that? And I won't go into it in depth tonight, but it's something that we're working on. I've talked to conservation, they understand, you know, the basics of it. And you'll hear more about it in the future. Any questions on any of that stuff? Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And I think next up, we have the planning board.
Master plan is something we're required to accomplish, and the master plan has to have certain components. And rather than doing every 5 to 10 years, doing the whole master plan and looking everything over and trying to get everything done at once, we decided several years ago to do the components one at a time and have it roll over and keep updating the components as we go along. Right now, we have about half of the components done, half, more than that. And we've come up with a master plan with those components in it. And I'd like to point out that in the master plan, there's an accomplishment, implementation program, I should say. What we saw has to be implemented, how it has to be done, and most importantly, who's responsible for it. So I'd like everyone to kind of look over and see, what do you have in here that you're responsible for, and try to get it done.
How do we get a copy of that?
Yeah.
I believe we have that on the, it's on the.
Oh, is it on?
Online, on the website?
Oh, good.
Oh, didn't know that.
And I think there's some that says BOS in here too, so I guess that's something people. Or if if you see something in there that doesn't make sense, maybe we did this 2-3 years ago, and it doesn't make sense anymore, let the planning board know. We don't have to wait till we do that component again. Right tonight, and what we're speaking of and what component we're doing now is economic development, and it just fits in with what's gone on before us. And we're only, as you know, part-time volunteer board, but we hire some experts to help us with these components and look and the studies. We have working now for us as Brown Walker, who has lots of experience in this area. And right tonight we have with us Sue Brown from Brown Walker. And I'm asking her to explain what's being done in economic development and what she needs from the town to help her come out with that plan, so we have a plan on what we're gonna do. So I ask Sue Brown to step up.
Great, thanks. Hi.
Hi.
It's nice to see you. Thank you for inviting me in. So as Ron has mentioned, I'm here on behalf of the planning board. We have been working on the master plan for a couple years now. We started with gathering the goals and recommendations from previous plans that were recently done, including the open space and recreation plan and the housing production plan. Then a couple years ago and into last year, we completed the land use section of the plan, looked at land uses, identified issues that needed to be addressed, and made recommendations for addressing those. This year, we're looking, studying economic development or the local economy. And we're doing that so that the town can make an informed decision about should there be more economic development, and if so, where should it be? What kind should it be? What would the impacts of that development be? And what should we do about it? So we're starting with developing or gathering information and data. I've submitted a draft of that to the planning board. Then we would like to, the planning board wants to ask the town bodies, the boards and committees, and eventually the public, to work with them and help them assess this data, and then look at the opportunities and constraints there are around economic development, and then set the goals and, of course, identify the recommendations for meeting those goals. So part of the economic development strategy looks at not only what businesses are here, what type of work folks do, but also your workforce, as well as your businesses are here. A big part of the study is looking at what's available for land and how your zoning and regulations affect that land. What is it that people can do on this land? And what is your infrastructure and capacity as a town to support economic development? So these are all the issues that this study is looking at. And as I said, once this data comes in, the planning board would really like to gather a lot of stakeholders, many of you I'm sure, back into the room and ask for your help in assessing this data and setting goals around economic development, whether it's a goal to support it or to guide it or limit it in any way, but make that decision as a community, and then help identify the strategies that are good for Berlin for meeting those goals. I'm happy to. Tim, Ron, do you want to add anything to that, or?
No, we'd like some input, because when we get some of this, more of the study, we haven't decided on this, some type of forum, maybe a town forum like we have here, or maybe it should be a public forum. That hasn't been decided yet. But when we get that, economic development, how much do we want to develop and how much do we want to keep the character? I mean, we know from the public they want the character to stay the same that it is. But we can do economic development and retain the character. So that's what we're trying to accomplish. Did you want to add anything, Tim?
We've worked with Brown and Walker and Tainer and Associates. They're former name for a long, long time, and it goes way back before the first Solomon Pond Mall. The studies that we did at that time that did economic projections went out 20 years, and I think a lot of us that have looked at those on occasion have always been surprised at how accurate they were. I think Diane is nodding her head, and it really was pretty remarkable to be able to project 20 years into the future and look at town budgets and overall tax levy and things like that. And so I think it's time to update that and really to get to this higher level that Dennis is talking about. We really have to understand, debt. We have to understand what a growing commercial and non-residential tax base means and the risks that it involves if there's changes in the economy. I don't think it's something that just those of us that volunteer in town or work on a part-time basis can accomplish. So by ourselves, I think we have a tremendous amount of input that we can offer, but I think it's time for us to get a little more sophisticated about this. When I go to Central Mass Regional Planning Committee meetings, I'm often very surprised that the difficult positions that a lot of our neighboring towns are in economically compared to our situation. We've made some very conscious decisions over the last 20 years about what it is that we want to do as a community in terms of managing growth and allowing it. But I think we're at a stage now where it's vital as we get this new revenue stream from these two projects to fully understand and appreciate how to manage that so we don't get carried away, like Thomas mentioned earlier on. So we grow at a reasonable clip, but stay in charge of the situation so we don't lose our heads. So with the help of Sue and her crew, and I think some other talent that's probably out there, I think we're going to get that accomplished.
Any questions or thoughts? My only thought would be, I think it's fabulous that you're starting this now because prevention's key. When you look around at other communities that have similar commercial growth, spin-off is incredible, and commercial spin-off. And I'm sure that was never anticipated when we thought we had great zoning in place, but pressures mount.
Yes.
And we're, reminded that Highland Commons is on residential land still annoys me.
Yeah, one issue that I'd like to see the planning board look at this year is the common drive. As I look at the results of what the common drive has done, and particularly what I see possibly happening as I look at a lot of land around town, I don't think it's a good idea, and I think we ought to take a second look at that, because it could open up some vast backlands. And be a lot of problems in most of these places. You couldn't get a fire truck up in some of them. I've been in places, so I think we ought to look at that. But there's 3 or 4 big areas with no frontage lots. There's frontage, but they're virtually unbuildable. But you could get a common drive in and build up the hillside and the back 40. So
Be more restrictive on the common drives is what you're saying to us.
Excuse me?
You want to be more restrictive on the common
Exactly.
drives.
You want to do away with it.
Well, I don't know we want to.
Well, let's
do away
just
with
look at it. Let's
Okay,
we'll discuss
we'll
it.
look at it more.
All right,
Yes, all right,
because it
sure,
hasn't been
sure.
good. It hasn't
Yeah,
done us
we
any
do that.
good.
Yeah.
I think that's,
Okay,
yeah,
all right.
anything else?
I don't know, I thought Skip Duggan probably likes his common driveway just fine, and 5 or 6 driveways coming in off of Ball Hill Road to serve those 5 houses that are all legal lots would have been ridiculous, but yeah, we can talk about it.
Yeah, we will.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Sounds great.
Now the Conservation Commission.
First recommendation is that the town spring for $200 for a PowerPoint overhead projector, because the one I got at the old town hall this evening, unfortunately, I'm sorry, didn't work just a few
Okay.
minutes ago. It's only a
We'll
couple
write
$100,
that down.
and what we can do is we can put together we could just basically have a slideshow that everyone could save. Three things we'd like to talk about tonight for conservation. It's a long meeting, so we'll be brief. First, I'd like to give everyone an update briefly on the Tri-Town Partnership. Some of you know what it's about, some of you don't, so we'll talk a little bit about that. There's some opportunities beyond Tri-Town, and Dennis alluded to the fact that as part of the monies that we get, $50,000 a year for about the next 15 years from Solomon Pond, we have about $400,000 in the Conservation Fund today, the Open Space Fund, for land acquisition and preservation, and then we will be getting another couple $100,000 from Highland Commons over the next 6 months to a year. That's pretty much the balance of our funding. No properties have ever been bought by Conservation Commission using town funds. It's been all from these funds, where basically we have rezoned these properties from commercial and agricultural, from residential and agricultural into commercial, and as a result, we've received funds or fees from the builders that have gone into open space protection. So that's what's happened. After this Tri-Town project's over, though, that's the second thing we'd like to talk about. There are some properties that I think really preserve the rural nature of the town. And all the meetings we had, and Sue Brown was here. Hello, Sue, how are you? She helped us with our open space plan. We had about 5 or 6 forums where people in town came, and preserving the rural nature of the town, the agricultural character, and scenic vistas were, along with recreation areas and conservation, were very high on their priority list. To do that is going to be beyond the Conservation Commission and the funds that we've had to date. We've been very successful getting about 50% reimbursement from the state when we buy conservation lands or agricultural preservation restrictions. But going forward, it's a possibility, as Dennis alluded to, the town may want to step up and purchase some of these, sell off part of it for a profit, keep the other part for conservation for town purposes, or just basically preserve the agriculture in town. And the third thing, people have talked about trails and what trails we have in town. Walter will talk about that. So let's start with the Tri-Town. I'll try to be brief. There have been 3 grants given by the state for similar type activity as this Tri-Town activity. Walter had a great idea. I thought it couldn't be done. It was Walter's brainchild. He was the brainchild on this. He said, let's go to the state and see if we can apply for one of these large conservation grants where a significant amount of acreage needs to be preserved. We're looking at saving 500 acres, that's a lot, in the Rack Meadow, Pisgah area. It borders Boylston, it is in Boylston, Berlin, and Northborough. So those 3 towns together, working with Sudbury Valley trustees, put together a grant request to the state, and we got the grant. It's $1.47 million of funds the state will provide. They're matching funds to what the towns provide. If a conservation restriction is given or a piece of property is given, that counts on our ledger toward the total amount that the state will match. Were we to buy land, that counts on the ledger toward what the state would match. If this is done, this 500 acres, it will stretch all the way from Pisgah to Rocky Pond over in Northborough and the other side of Summer Star over in Boylston. It's a significant area. The total area, and it's large, would be about 6,100 acres overall that would be in this preservation area. It would be 6,100. It will be one of the largest contiguous preserved chunks of property anywhere east of Worcester, period. Maybe excepting Miles Standish Park down in the Cape and a few areas that have been designated, just pristine habitat. Outside of that, this would be fantastic. Where are we on it? We've got the grant. There are about 73 parcels where we've talked to various landowners. I'm putting a conservation restriction on my land. Emily Wolf is doing the same. Barry's donating his 5 acres that's over in Northborough, adjacent to the 60 acres that he sold to the town graciously for half what it was worth on Ager Woods on Ball Hill. There's a Matthews property that Walter has worked on for about 10 or 12 or 15 years that is going to get sold at a sale price. That's where Jones Road hits Crosby. That will be about 26 acres. Another key piece of property is one from Beckstrom's, where we're buying a conservation restriction. We'll own a chunk of land so we could do wildlife habitat logging as needed up in the Pisgah area to improve the habitat. There are 28 properties. I'm not going to go through them all, but
Skip, could you put that on this side so I can get it with the camera?
I don't know if you can do it, but I mailed the slides to Mary.
All right.
But
Thank you.
The Feuersteins are going to go and provide conservation restrictions for all the properties around their house at the corner of Ball Hill and Linden. Beckstrom's across the road. There are numerous chunks of property that Sudbury Valley Trustees has worked on with us in the Boylston and Northborough areas that abut Berlin. So the bottom line is, we have through 2016 to execute all the purchase and sale agreements and start closing these. The Beckstrom piece, for example, was a key piece of property, and you're going to hear that we paid a lot of money, more than we've ever paid, $232,000 to buy 6 acres, but to also get another 23 or 24 in conservation restriction. That's the connector piece of property that we had to have to connect everything east of Ball Hill Road to all of Pisgah and to Rack Meadow, so that all the other properties that are purchased or given to us, or where we buy the conservation restriction, or where the conservation restriction is given to us, east of Ball Hill Road, all counts toward this 500 acres. It looks like we have about 480 toward 500. Celia Reichel, who runs this program for the state, loves this area, understands the diversity, the ecological sensitivity, and it's very likely that they may proportion this at 480 divided by 500 times the 1.47 million. So the good news is they extended it an extra year. We have about 40 to 50% of this property already tied up either in commitments or purchase and sale agreements, and Sudbury Valley Trustees has hired an individual full-time to work on this. So that's the good news about this tri-town. It's the best thing that has happened for conservation in Berlin since I've been on the Conservation Commission. This is a big chunk of land that'll help preserve the rural nature of the town. I'm not going to go through all the pieces of property. The bottom line in Berlin so far is there's about 90.9 acres in Berlin, and all of our expense after all of the state reimbursements are made would be about, out of our conservation funds, would be about $64,000. So for $600 an acre, we're either buying or getting a conservation restriction per acre. And you know what an acre costs to develop in this town or to buy for a home lot? It's $100 grand. Some of this is backland, not worth as much, but $600 an acre, it's exceptional. Sudbury Valley Trustees is going to be doing a lot of fundraising activities. The reason Sudbury Valley Trustees is involved in this is, one, they're getting a very, very small amount of fee from the various towns to manage this process. They're good at it. They have lawyers that work for a very small amount of money. The properties all need to have appraisals, and they all need to have surveys, so they can do a bulk agreement with the folks for surveys and for appraisals. They're very experienced at this. And the other reason is they will be given a conservation restriction on the bulk of these properties also, so there's a second level of protection. So this is a great partnership between Berlin Conservation Commission, Northborough Conservation, Boylston, and Sudbury Valley Trustees. Walter may want to talk about something that's beyond the tri-town, because as Dennis said, by the time this is all done, we will pretty much have exhausted all of our conservation lands. So you may want to talk about other opportunities, Walter. They're on the slides.
Well, just briefly, without a...
I'm sorry. What Boylston and Northborough's percentage of land involved in this 500? Are we
Key
carrying the
thing
bulk
on,
here?
no, we're not carrying the bulk of it. It actually turns out to be pretty much even. The big deal for Boylston that's going to make it happen is they have 232 acres in tax title taking that's been sitting there for years. and I hope no one from Boylston's here, but they've been absolutely stupid on our Conservation Commission in the past. They think we've got all this state land around Wachusett, we don't need any more conservation land, hell, let's sell it off. The piece that's Jameson Ridge, that was going to be Jameson Ridge, that we fought hard against, that was in Boylston on Linden, just on the Berlin border, was going to be 40 houses. It was a 40B project, and I'm for affordable housing, but not if it's not near schools, city services, jobs, and transportation. If you put a pin in Boylston or Berlin, that would be about the farthest away from those and the most orthogonal to a 40B plan that you could come up with. Many times we met with them. I personally tried to buy the property myself to do 2 fourplexes in the front and leave the rest of it in conservation. Boylston didn't even want to talk to us. Finally, there's a lady named Shay Lynn who just opened what's called Summer Star, which is an Audubon Center. It's wonderful. If you haven't gone, go. Talk about something great. It's open Monday through Thursdays, 11 to 4. The rest of the time it's left wild. She's going to have every school, 3rd and 4th grade around here coming over for wildlife programs, Audubon lectures. She spent like $8 or $9 million of her own money. She loves Central Mass, and she's going to put a 40-acre conservation restriction on the back of it now that her property is done. So that's an example of properties that are going to be put in conservation restriction. We get the credit because there's a value on that, but we put no money out. Boylston puts no money out. But the big thing is the tax title in Boylston. That's about 232 acres of the 40. And that's great. They've seen the light. I've also talked to a couple of the folks that are selectmen. SBT's been to the selectmen meeting over in Boylston and lobbied them. They have new Conservation Commission members. And I think that's part of the reason that one's going to happen. But if you look at all of it, when it's all said and done, outside that 232 in Boylston, the rest of it's pretty well evenly distributed. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Couple of things, and I will be brief. Without a map, it's difficult to talk about this anyway. We were hoping we'd have a map projected up on there with all the land, so I could tell you about the lands, the trails. Just suffice to say that we have about 25 miles of trails in Berlin on our conservation lands. And we're linking more of those conservation lands together so that you get from one place to the other. The 2 big things that are important right now, the MDC has allowed the aqueduct to be developed into a trail. Northborough and Southborough have already formally done that. We're looking into that a little bit. They'll let town do it if the town maintains it. I want to find out what that means because we can't be mowing that whole aqueduct thing. The other thing that's kind of exciting is the rail, the Central Mass Rail, which runs through the center of town from Hudson, parallel in 62, you cross it when you go up Highland Street, then it goes down Carter Street, crosses Colburn Road. From Boston to Colburn Road has been turned over to the Department of Conservation and Recreation for a rail trail. Other towns have done it, but what we've come up with is, I don't think Berlin wants a 10-foot wide paved strip with another yellow line down. What we're looking for is like an 8-foot maximum unpaved but graveled road, and the DCR will give a town a license to do this, to hire their own contractors. The rails have been used as compensation. So we're looking into that. There's a meeting in Waltham on the 18th of November. I'm going to look into that a little bit. But the trail would come through, and it wouldn't be intrusive at all to anybody, except when you get down near the town barn by the McKelks. I think we can push it over near the right-of-way of the railroad, get it away, and then sneak it down the old county road. I know a few of you in here know where that is. Take it right down to Colburn Road. Then you could cross Colburn Road, and it continued on up through the flood control project, and there's a big loop up in there on our conservation land, the Clark property, so that would make a fitting end to it, plus there's parking there. But anyway, those are the 2 big trail things we're looking at, the aqueduct and the railroad, and we're strategically trying to buy up little pieces of land that connect big pieces that have trails on them so that we can link those together too. But the ideal thing would be able to leave Berlin Center and go to Gates Pond on public land, on a public trail, or go from here to Mount Pisgah you'd have to do some sidewalks, but then you could go to Boylston or Northborough and come back down around, all on trails. So that's what we're looking into. And Dennis alluded to one thing, and we've got to talk about this some more. We have never used tax money. Well, when we bought the Tyler piece years ago, that was the first big piece we bought for $60,000 up on the hill. But we're gonna have to start thinking about the Community Preservation Act. We're gonna have to start ask taxpayers to fund some open space. Incidentally, I think we've averaged better than 50% reimbursement from the state on the lands we bought. So we've really been very careful. One last point. When the Solomon Pond mitigation money came in, we estimated we might be able to get 250 to 300 acres with the money. All right, we have over 700 acres we bought with it, and we still have half the money. I don't know how many more years we've got on that. 15 years, so we've got half the money. And we bought, it's over 600 acres with that land already. So we're doing pretty good.
Thank you. We have Zoning Board of Appeals. Is Jean here?
I don't see Jeannie. I know Jeannie was.
I know that she's busy with the night before an election, so, all right. Then we'll pass along to the library.
I'm Bob Hodge, I'm the library director, for any of those of you who don't know me. I just wanted to pass along one item that the library has been working on, a design plan, a preliminary design plan to hopefully do some kind of renovation at the current site. We got a strong feeling when we did our library survey as part of our long-range plan that people would like to see the library stay put where it is. And I'm following a trail. I've been the library director for 1.5 years, and I've been following a trail of correspondence back to 10 years ago or longer, when a proposed new library building was turned down. So as part of that, we've met with the DEP once to discuss some of the issues we have around our current site. And so our intention, our strategy is to try and come up with a plan that we can go back to the DEP with that will satisfy better access to our building and better functionality of the building. You know, whether any of this is going to pan out, we're not really sure. I had a chance to talk with Judy some today about that plan. So that is basically it. I just wanted to share that with everybody so that everyone's aware. Does anyone have any questions about it?
I have one question. Are you interested in improving the space for holding more books, or to create, kiosks so people can go online, which I do, and
Right.
I love to have the ability. I go to Hudson and do this. You go online, and via CW Mars, I can order anything, and a day later, it's all there.
Yeah.
Being able to go online on a PC kiosk and order books
Right.
without having Berlin to pay for putting them on the shelf, and I can get them in 2 days from anywhere in the
Well,
country.
this is true. I mean,
I love it.
As a small town library, we can really, access the entire world from. So we don't necessarily, obviously, we can't have everything on the shelves that we might want
Sure.
to have on them. But I mean, if you're familiar with our building,
Yep.
it's a 1928 building.
Right.
It's upstairs, downstairs. We have a steep set of stairs that are an issue with the young children, and so I'm trying to think of ways how a better design in this building, and then the issues just with the water. So there's a lot to. I'm just trying to take it a step at a time, and the next step would be just a preliminary plan. We don't have any construction ideas or anything like that in mind at this point, but we need professionals to give us ideas.
You're only staying for 1.5 years?
I've been there 1.5 years.
I thought you said, oh, okay.
Oh, I'm only
good.
staying a year and a half?
No, you said, I thought you said that, and I was gonna say, my wife says you're the most helpful librarian she's ever run across. So
Oh, man, well, I
that's
appreciate it.
really helpful.
Yeah,
So you're here for 20 more years then, good.
yeah, well, maybe shall see. Okay, well, that's all I have to say.
Awesome.
Thanks, Phil.
Thank you. And we actually have one more request. Joyce Lamont from the Council on Aging. Want to talk to us for a couple of minutes.
I have to confess that I didn't really know what this was all about, but
Neither did we at the beginning.
We still don't.
Yeah.
we're hoping to improve a lot of things in the Council on Aging, or go in different directions. What we're hoping to do, one of the things is around the mitigation agreement that Judy's been helping me with. We really feel that we need to be proactive in finding transportation for seniors in the future. Maybe not today and probably not tomorrow, but once the building, that monstrosity, is finished in front of my house, we'll have 40 more people. And whenever anybody comes to Northbrook Village, they always want to know where's the nearest grocery store, where's the nearest movie house, and we have to tell them at least 5 to 10 miles away, so they need transportation. So that's the biggest thing that would impact what you people are talking here. We also had a meeting with Diane and the Council on Aging, maybe be helping the work-off program. So that's our biggest future plan. So I think what we're going to try to do is get the figures together to put on the May town meeting to purchase some type of transportation for, with the mitigation money. And there is we have to decide what we want too. If we buy a bus that has wheelchair accessible, then our insurance will be higher and so forth and so on, and we'll need a driver that's capable of using that. If we buy a plain bus, then we won't be able to service the people that have a wheelchair. So we have to, these are issues that we will be putting together before the town meeting in May. Thank you, though.
That's
Thank
one
you.
question. Is Northbrook Village itself, the organization, the company that provides that, willing to provide some of the funds for this, for the folks that are their residents? It would be great if they were a stakeholder also and could offer that as a benefit to the folks that move into Northbrook Village.
Well, we've tried, the Council on Aging has tried to approach them about sharing things.
Right.
They're currently making plans to have a van available for the residents of Northbrook Village. But we're just a very small little group, and they don't want to ask anybody from the town. We've had similar programs on Council on Aging, like on Balance,
Right.
and we asked if Berlin seniors could attend, and they will not allow
So
them.
they won't do it.
And I'm not even sure how the second building is going to be handled. I don't know if it's going to be handled by the same people. It may not be. And then the other thing is what additional seniors will be involved in the Reese property is, going to make a decision. But I think the first thing we have to do is get a van and then worry about, and then work from there. Yeah.
Is it just for seniors or seniors and disabled?
Well, see, that's the funny part about,
Because we have young people in this town that are housebound because there is no transportation.
well, that makes a good point. So that would be that we as a town should purchase something that has facilities for the handicapped or housebound people. So, yes,
I'm
Ron?
not familiar where your house is, so when you said the monstrosity in front of your house, what are you referring to?
I'm at Northbrook Village, and see, when Northbrook Village was first built, many, many years ago, there was an additional property with the idea that they would expand Northbrook Village at some point in time. So they went out and they expanded, but now HUD is getting more and more involved. It was never intended to be a Berlin housing project. It was always intended to be run by some other level of government. And HUD is building a 202 project here. Howsomever, they had some serious concerns and it went into litigation and it hasn't been completed. So people come there and they, they used to come and they say, oh Joyce, how much did you pay for your condo? Now they come back and ask what that building is that's rotting in front of my apartment. So, thank you, Mary.
Thank you. All right. I think that's it.
Yeah.
I want to thank all the town officers who came out tonight. I did remember the thing I wanted to say at the beginning is that we are looking at, we're starting a survey of the public safety departments. We're going to be getting the active phase of that in the next couple of weeks. In line with many of the other things that we've talked about is this is the time to do it. If you want to catch a wave, you catch it, as it's approaching. You don't catch it once you're way over your head in it. And I think that's what we're trying to do. And I think we've heard that in a number of ways, in conservation, in planning, in finances, and in looking at the way we're organized. I'm also cognizant, and I want to thank the town officers and staff here. This job has, first of all, it's shocking that it was 20 years ago, basically, that we did the Solomon Pound Mall. I can't, but in those 20 years, these jobs have become bigger, they've become more complex, they've become more regulated. There are many, many more things happening to react to, and I certainly thank everybody here for their efforts in that regard. And I would also say to those people who are at home, if you have any desire to help us, it wouldn't be a community without you. So please think about it. We have posted a number of positions that are open. The selectmen have right now a number of projects that they're looking at and looking for positions on an advisory committee, which is a great way to start the habit of public service. So I think I'd ask people to please think about that. So thank you.
Okay, we're rolling.
Oh my God, her mom has massive bleeding ulcers.
Oh dear.
What other town?
What's that? You ready?
We're
on?
on.
Okay. All right, we're rolling again here. Two things remaining. Very, very quick. Anything else to be raised in open session? We had completed the regular agenda. Nothing else?
No.
Okay. Then the other question I would ask is if anybody had any wish to review anything in the miscellaneous correspondence.
I can read what I want.
Okay.
When this is over.
Walter, anything for you?
I did,
All right,
yeah.
yeah, I mean, we've gotten obviously some of these things via email and so on, so. All right, I have nothing there. Then I would request that we go into executive session. The purpose of this is to discuss ongoing litigation, specifically the Johnson Street 10 of Berlin matter. Anything else that we need to cover in executive session? Maybe do we need an update on the South Street property?
I could give you an update.
Okay, so we will do that for the purposes again of contract negotiation on the possible purchase of land for the town.
And not re-entering open session.
And we will not re-enter open session thereafter. This requires a roll call vote to go into executive session. Andrew, aye.
Walter, Bickford, aye.
Boom and I.
Thanks.